story we brought you a few days ago. MS Now Pentagon correspondent was with us here on set. Bring her reporting. Priya Sridhar on last week about angry military families challenging the acting Secretary of the Navy over the conditions aboard the USS Lincoln as the combat mission against Iran stretches on with no clear timelines. The families of those on board raised concerns over the sailors' mental health, about safety on deck, long workdays, food shortages, water contamination, moldy showers, and sailors running out of toothpaste, deodorant, soap, and other supplies. Now, new reporting shows some of those military members aboard the Lincoln have begun taking desperate measures as the aircraft carrier sets a modern-day record for the most continuous days at sea. The aircraft carrier had been on deployment for well over 260 days after leaving its home port of San Diego on November 21st. Military Times reports one woman says her husband was repeatedly overextended before he attempted to jump overboard from the carrier. She adds that he's scared and remains on medical hold. Another woman tells the outlet her husband was on watch when he saw a shipmate preparing to go overboard as well. She says her husband intervened, calling out to the sailor before grabbing their arms and pulling them onto the deck. This is extraordinary reporting, first from Priya at MS Now, who brought us that last week. Now the Military Times guys going into detail. Since November 21st, they have been out to sea. This is the longest deployment on a ship like that ever. And when we think about, what these guys and women have been going through, and with the fact that the Secretary of Defense seemed very interested and obsessed with their testosterone levels, but not whether or not they're getting real food aboard the ship, as this war drags on, and who knows how long they'll be out there. There have been town hall meetings from these military families in the San Diego area where they have just erupted, understandably so, on leaders about the conditions they're hearing about from their loved ones on board that ship.
It's about military readiness. This is something that we worried about on the Armed Services Committee all the time. You have to make sure the rotation is such that people can do their rotation, they can do their duty, then they can get home.
There is no rotation.
They can get back on base, they can rest up, they can be, again, prepared. So this comes down to military readiness. I've never seen anything like this before. And again, this is the problem. This is what happens when you have a defense secretary that's obsessed about the color of people's skin, whether somebody is a man or a woman, testosterone levels, this obsession over DEI. And that's all we ever hear about. And what we're not hearing about is, the basics. The basics always start with readiness. So men and women of the United States military, militarily ready to go into combat if called upon. And this is the exact opposite of what you do to make sure that they are prepared and ready to go. And this doesn't have anything to do with toughness or this or that or the other. There are normal rotations. This is insane by any measure at all.
Hello, Bobby Jones here from MeidasTouch and Valor Media Networks. The report you just saw is hammering home the cost of this war, not in dollars, not in equipment, but in life. Now, before I really get into this, I need to just make a couple of things clear. Number one, I know what it's like to be extended on deployment in the Middle East. It happened to me a couple of times. And 8 to 9 months at sea is rough. It's rough. But even then, we were allowed to pull into ports all over the world that kind of broke up the monotony. The reports coming from USS Abraham Lincoln are disturbing for many reasons. Number one, this is the culmination of a lot of policies that have now left America's military basically depleted. And I'm not just talking about the armaments. I'm talking about personnel, the most valuable asset of the United States military. For those of you who are watching abroad, I have no illusions that the United States military is not perfect or it's godlike. Trust me, when you serve as long as I did, you understand where the shortcomings are. But if any nation sent their loved ones out to do something, you would want it to be, one, in the good faith of the defense of their nation, and two, they have the stuff they need to do it, and finally, three, that the reason that they're going is worthwhile. The current administration has failed on all of those fronts. First of all, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the aircraft carrier that was in the Middle East before Abraham Lincoln got there, went through its own personal hell. A fire on the ship that cost 600 bunks, so people had to sleep on the floor. You're talking about, sewage issues, quality of life issues on an extended deployment, setting the then post-Vietnam record for an aircraft deployment. Now we have USS Abraham Lincoln basically in the same situation. Now, as far as we know, there have been no fire, but the situation is so bad that you're talking about 6 sailors, people who, mind you, are calibrated to do this type of mission, feeling like they have to do something dramatic to end it. When told about this, family members were only getting a phone call from the ombudsman, basically the command representative, that's a civilian, and not really hearing any more information because the United States Navy has gone into complete information lockdown mode. They're not allowing communications from the sailors to their loved ones. And so all they have to rely on are the bits of information that got out and what the Navy's telling them. And if you've learned anything about this administration when it comes to the military, truth is not the way they roll. It's not the way they roll. But understand something when I say this is a culmination of many things. Let's go back and remember what Pete Hegseth, the current Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War as he likes to call himself, did specifically to the United States Navy. He fired the Chief of Naval Operations. He was responsible for making sure the Secretary of the Navy was also fired, although he wasn't the greatest. He has removed the multiple admirals that were respected in the Navy. The Chaplain Corps, which, by the way, that's where sailors and Marines go on ships to talk through some of these mental issues. That has been forever changed and gutted and reshaped. The Judge Advocate General Corps, the military lawyers that are supposed to tell you if something is legal or not, that was gutted. And so you look at all of these things, then you move into a war situation where you obviously miscalculated the enemy, and you definitely didn't think of the logistics necessary for a sustained conflict in the Middle East because you allowed your bases to be bombed where these ships would have to go to refuel and pull in and step on solid land and then go back out. You didn't calculate any of that. And so now you're getting these reports. And these aren't just sailors that, hey, this is their first deployment. I sincerely doubt that. San Diego, California, where the home port is for USS Abraham Lincoln, has a community of grizzled Navy veteran families. They know what deployment looks like. They know the ups and downs about it. And for them to go off on naval leadership like they are children because they're not being told the truth and they're not being told what's being done to help their loved ones says a lot. I'm part of the Global War on Terrorism generation, the GWAT generation, and we dealt with deployments. We dealt with back-to-back deployments. We dealt with a lot of things, and we developed a high tolerance for it. But the one thing that we did try to do was keep families informed, let people know what was going on with their loved ones. We were not perfect. We could have been better, should have been better, but we were never this. A Pentagon that doesn't even have a press corps that meets on a regular basis in there anymore. The media that does get out, they search for the leakers instead of what they're talking about. The priorities are jacked up. United States military is not failing because it was not trained properly or it did not have the weapons necessary to do the job. It's failing because the leadership has purposely hollowed out the force. It hollowed out and fired the generals and admirals that were respected, that had the experience from the global war on terrorism, America's longest war. And it was turned over to a bunch of bravado packing wannabe tough guys that don't know how to do any of this. They don't. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Pete Hegseth should be fired. And, who knows, maybe he'll get appointed to take Senator Blackburn's seat when she becomes Tennessee governor. Whatever it takes to get him out of that seat, it needs to happen. Because all you see is failure after failure after failure with him in charge. You see a force that is a shell of itself. You see the family members who want to support their loved ones in agony because they can't. And you have a commander-in-chief that seems bored with the war that he started.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.